I never imagined that the sound of my own name would be enough to make my hands shake again. But the moment I heard it echo across the glass-walled conference room, my heart forgot how to beat properly. I hadn't heard that voice in 3 years, not since the night I packed my life into 2 suitcases and left New York with a broken heart and unanswered questions. I kept my eyes fixed on the polished table, pretending to review the papers in front of me, hoping, praying that if I didn't look up, reality would hesitate. But reality never hesitates. "Emma," he said again, calm and controlled, the same way he used to speak when he was trying not to let his emotions show. I slowly raised my eyes, and there he was, Daniel Carter, my ex, the man who once held my hand like it was the only thing keeping him alive, the man who broke me without ever meaning to, and now, my boss. The room felt smaller with him in it, like the walls were closing in, trapping every memory I had tried so hard to bury. He stood at the head of the table in a perfectly tailored navy suit, confidence carved into his posture, success written all over him. This wasn't the struggling startup guy I once loved who counted coins to buy coffee. This was a powerful executive, respected, admired, and completely unreachable. Or at least, that's what I told myself. His eyes met mine, and for just a second, the professional mask cracked, just enough for me to see it. The same pain, the same longing, the same love that never really died. 3 years earlier, things had been simpler, messier, and painfully real. Daniel and I met in Chicago, 2 dreamers trying to survive in a city that didn't care about broken hearts or unpaid bills. We fell in love the way people do when they have nothing else, fully, recklessly, without backup plans. He believed in building something from nothing, and I believed in him. I believed in his late nights, his empty promises that one day everything would be worth it, and his whispered apologies when work came before me. I told myself love meant patience. I told myself love meant waiting. But love, I learned, can also mean slowly disappearing. The night everything ended, rain pressed against our apartment windows like it was trying to listen. Daniel had just received an offer, an incredible one, a chance to move to San Francisco, to join a company that could change his entire future. He was excited, nervous, alive in a way I hadn't seen in months. I smiled for him, even though my chest felt tight. When he asked me to come with him, his voice hopeful but unsure, I froze. My career, my family, my identity, everything I had built was in New York. I asked for time. He heard hesitation. And in that moment, fear made the decisions love couldn't. We didn't fight loudly, we fought quietly, which somehow hurt more. Words were chosen carefully, but each one still cut deep. He accused me of not believing in him. I accused him of choosing success over us. By the time the sun came up, our love was already bleeding out. I left 2 days later, telling myself it was temporary, that distance might save us. It didn't. The calls became shorter, the messages became polite, and one day they stopped altogether. No closure, no goodbye, just silence. Now, standing in that conference room years later, silence once again wrapped itself around us, but this time it was heavy with everything unsaid. "You'll be reporting directly to me," Daniel said professionally, his tone neutral, as if he hadn't memorized the way I used to smile when I was nervous, as if he didn't know exactly how my voice would sound when I said, "Of course." My coworkers looked between us, sensing something but not understanding it. To them, this was just a workplace introduction. To me, it was emotional warfare. Working under him felt like reopening a wound that never fully healed. Every meeting, every email, every casual interaction tested my self-control. He never crossed a line, never said anything inappropriate, but his eyes spoke volumes. Sometimes I caught him staring when he thought I wasn't looking. Other times he seemed distant, cold, like he was afraid of letting anything slip. The tension between us was thick, unspoken, and exhausting. We were 2 people pretending to be strangers, even though every shared glance screamed history. One evening, long after everyone else had left, I stayed late to finish a report. The office lights were dim, the city glowing through the windows like a million unslept dreams. I didn't hear him approach until he spoke my name softly, not like a boss, like a memory. I turned around, and for the first time since that first meeting, we were alone. No titles, no audience, just us. "I didn't know you worked here," he said, his voice lower than usual. I laughed bitterly. "I didn't know you'd be my boss." The conversation we had that night was careful but honest. We talked about careers, about growth, about everything except the one thing that mattered most, yet every pause was filled with emotion. When he finally asked why I never called back, my throat tightened. I wanted to scream the truth, that I was scared, that I felt unchosen, that I didn't want to beg someone to love me. Instead, I gave him a half answer. He nodded, like he understood, but I could see regret etched into his face. As days turned into weeks, the past refused to stay buried. Old feelings surfaced in quiet moments, shared laughter over coffee, late-night brainstorming sessions, the way he still remembered how I took my tea. And the hardest part wasn't seeing him again. It was realizing that despite everything, I still loved him. Not the idea of him, the man who hurt me, the man who grew without me, the man who now stood above me professionally, emotionally untouchable. Then one night, after a company event filled with fake smiles and forced conversations, everything shifted. The city was loud, my heart louder. Daniel walked me to my car, the space between us charged. He stopped, looked at me, and for the first time let his guard fall completely. "I never stopped loving you," he said, his voice breaking just enough to shatter the walls I had built. My breath caught. I had dreamed of hearing those words and feared them just as much, because love, once broken, doesn't come back the same. I wanted to tell him that loving him nearly destroyed me, that I rebuilt myself from pieces he never saw, that being strong now didn't mean I was unbreakable. But before I could speak, before I could decide whether to run or fall back into him, my phone buzzed, a message that changed everything, a reminder that the past wasn't the only thing standing between us anymore. The phone buzzed in my hand like a warning I wasn't ready to face. Daniel's words, "I never stopped loving you," still hung in the air between us, fragile and dangerous. I looked down at the screen, my heart already racing before I even read the message. One notification, one sentence, enough to shift the ground beneath my feet. "We need to talk. I'm in town. Mark." My fingers went cold. Daniel noticed the change instantly. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his voice gentle, careful, like he was walking across broken glass. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes and locked my phone. "Yeah, just work stuff." It was a lie, and we both felt it. Lies had always been our weakness. He studied me for a long second, then nodded, stepping back to give me space. That distance hurt more than closeness ever did. The drive home was a blur of city lights and memories I didn't invite. Mark was a chapter of my life Daniel never knew, or maybe he knew parts, but not the whole truth. Mark was the one who helped me survive after Daniel left, the one who stood beside me while I rebuilt myself piece by piece, the one who loved me when I was empty, and the one I walked away from when I realized my heart was still somewhere else. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying Daniel's confession again and again. He still loved me. The words felt unreal, like something borrowed from another lifetime. Back then, I would have given anything to hear them. Now, they felt like a storm threatening everything I had worked so hard to stabilize. Loving him again wasn't just risky, it was terrifying. The next morning at work, everything felt heavier. Daniel was distant again, professional to the point of being cold. It was as if the moment in the parking lot never happened. Maybe that was his way of protecting himself, or maybe it was mine. Meetings dragged on, emails blurred together, and all I could think about was how quickly love can resurface and how dangerous it becomes when timing is cruel. By lunchtime, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed air. I slipped out to a small cafe across the street, hoping the noise of strangers would quiet my thoughts. It didn't. I was halfway through my coffee when I heard my name spoken in a voice I hadn't heard in months. Emma. I looked up, and there he was, Mark. He looked older, tired in a way that came from disappointment rather than age. His smile was hesitant, like he wasn't sure if he was welcome in my world anymore. My heart twisted with guilt. "You're really here?" I said softly. He nodded. "I told you I was coming." We sat across from each other, the space between us filled with everything we never resolved. "Mark didn't waste time. He never did. He heard you're working at Carter Industries," he said, watching my reaction closely. I stiffened. "Yeah, I am." He exhaled slowly. "So it's true. He's back in your life." I didn't answer, because the truth was written all over my face. Mark leaned back, pain flashing in his eyes. "I always knew this would happen," he said quietly. "I just didn't know it would hurt this much." He reminded me of who I was when Daniel left. Broken, insecure, lost. He reminded me that he stayed when I cried at 2 a.m., that he believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. And the worst part was, he was right. I owed him more than silence, more than half answers, more than running away because facing my feelings was easier than choosing. When I returned to the office, Daniel was waiting outside my office door. His jaw tightened when he saw my expression. "Are you okay?" he asked. I hesitated, then decided honesty was the only thing that wouldn't destroy us completely. My ex came back. The words hit him harder than I expected. His eyes darkened, not with anger, but fear. Real, raw fear, the kind you can't fake. "I see," he said after a pause. "Does he still love you?" I swallowed. Yes. Silence stretched between us, thick and painful. "And do you still love him?" Daniel asked quietly. That was the question, wasn't it? The one I had been avoiding. I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came out. Because the truth was complicated. Because loving Daniel never meant I hadn't loved Mark. Because hearts don't follow clean timelines. Over the next few days, tension built like a storm waiting to break. Mark wanted closure or maybe another chance. Daniel tried to pretend none of it affected him, but I saw it in the way he avoided eye contact, in the way his voice softened when he spoke to me alone. At night, I replayed memories from 2 different lives, unsure which one belonged to the woman I was becoming. One evening, after another long day, Daniel finally stopped pretending. "Come with me," he said abruptly. I hesitated, but followed him to the rooftop overlooking the city. The wind was cold, the skyline endless. "I know I lost you once," he said, his voice strained, "and I don't want to be the reason you're torn apart again, but I need you to know something." He turned to face me fully, eyes searching mine. "If you choose him, I'll respect it. But if there's even a part of you that still believes in us, I won't walk away this time." My chest ached. This wasn't the man who left without fighting. This was someone who had learned from loss, someone who finally understood the cost of silence. I wanted to step into his arms. I wanted to forget every scar. But love doesn't erase consequences. And before I could respond, my phone rang again. Mark. I looked at the screen, then at Daniel. 2 men, 2 pasts, one impossible choice. I answered the call, my voice barely steady, not realizing that what Mark was about to say would change everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and timing. I answered the call with shaking hands, stepping a few feet away from Daniel as the cold wind brushed against my skin. "Hello?" My voice sounded unfamiliar, like it belonged to someone braver than I felt. Mark's voice came through quietly, but every word carried weight. "I'm leaving tomorrow," he said. I closed my eyes. "I got an offer in Seattle. Long term. I won't come back this time." My chest tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. There was a pause. Then he said the words I wasn't prepared for. "Because I needed to know if I was leaving alone, or if you were ever coming with me." I ended the call without answering. Not because I didn't care, but because the answer had already chosen itself inside my silence. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the city lights, realizing that sometimes life doesn't ask what you want. It asks who you are willing to lose. Daniel didn't rush me. He never did anymore. He just waited, hands in his pockets, eyes steady, like he had already accepted whatever outcome would come. I walked back to him slowly. "He's leaving," I said. Daniel nodded. "And you?" he asked softly. I looked at him, really looked at him, not as my boss, not as my past, but as the man standing in front of me now. "I'm staying," I whispered. His breath hitched, just slightly. That night, nothing dramatic happened. No kiss, no promises, just a quiet understanding that sometimes love doesn't need fireworks. It needs honesty. We both knew there was still damage, still fear, still consequences, but there was also growth, and that mattered. Over the next few weeks, things changed naturally, slowly. Daniel requested HR to move me under a different department head, not because he didn't want me near, but because he respected boundaries. That alone told me how different he had become. We started again in small ways. Coffee after work, long walks through Central Park, conversations that didn't avoid the hard parts. We talked about our mistakes openly, without defensiveness. We talked about how love failed us before, and how we failed love. One evening, sitting on my apartment floor surrounded by takeout boxes, Daniel finally said what had been living between us for years. "When I left, I thought success would make me worthy of you," he admitted. "But all it did was teach me what I lost." Tears filled my eyes. "And I thought loving you meant losing myself," I replied. "But walking away taught me how to stand on my own." We didn't try to erase the past. We accepted it, and somehow that made the future feel lighter. Months later, the company hosted a major industry event. Daniel stood on stage, confident, respected. As applause filled the room, his eyes found mine. This time, there was no regret there, just certainty. After the event, he took my hand, not secretly, not nervously, but proudly. And for the first time, loving him didn't feel like sacrifice. It felt like choice. Mark sent me a message from Seattle a few weeks later. A simple one. "I hope you're happy." I replied honestly, "I am, and I hope you are too." There was no bitterness left, just gratitude for a chapter that helped me survive. Love didn't come back the way I imagined it would. It didn't arrive with apologies alone, or grand gestures. It came back wiser, quieter, stronger. And this time, we didn't love each other to escape loneliness. We loved each other because we finally knew who we were without each other. Some people think second chances are about fixing the past. They're not. They're about meeting again as different people and deciding, this time, with open eyes. And as I stood beside Daniel, no longer his employee, no longer his ex, but his partner, I realized something simple and true. Love didn't leave us. We just weren't ready for it before.